Welcome back to the Intentional Intern Podcast. Since May is Mental Health Awareness Month, this week's episode is all about thriving and not just surviving in your career and life. This week's guest is Daniel Horgan, the CEO of CoLabL, an organization devoted to helping early career talent expand their networks, skills, and experiences to achieve their definition of success. Daniel himself is a visionary entrepreneur and speaker with over 20 years of experience in community building, talent development, and mentoring. So he's no stranger to transformational programming that provides impact. I would know. In today's episode, we unpack what inspired him to build CoLabL, how he's transforming both early career and seasoned professionals through intentional relationship building, and how his new book, We Got This, a pocket guide to thriving in our careers and life, is helping readers navigate the complexities of work and life itself. For those who want to connect with Daniel, you can find his LinkedIn and his book linked below. And with that, let's get into today's episode. It's definitely one you don't want to miss. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good. Hi, Amaya. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I am so excited to record with you today. And for the audience, you guys will see why. He's just amazing. But I will leave it to Daniel. Again, thank you so much for just being on the show. I'm very excited again to have you here. I would love if you could start our audience off by introducing who you are.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me. So Dan Horgan, I'm joining you from Southern California, where I moved last year from New York City. I run an organization called CoLabL. And so CoLabL is in business for 10 years now, which is crazy because I can't believe 10 years have passed since I launched it. But our core mission is to support and partner with early career talent to help them expand their networks, their skills, and their experiences to achieve their definition of success. And I think that's such an important part of our mission because so often, again, we can get caught up in trying to achieve other people's definition of what they think is best for us. And so our work is really helping people figure out what is right for themselves and then help them along the journey. We also work a lot with people managers. We believe sort of a bottom-up, top-down approach. So with people managers, we're trying to create relationship-centered workspaces so that early career talent can continue to grow and thrive and continue to explore all sorts of different types of career pathways within their organizations. And so that's a little bit about the work we do. I'm sure we'll dive more into it.
Oh my gosh, like you just said so much in so little time. That was a 10 out of 10 pitch. And for all of you who do not know, also, Dan has collaborated with the Society for Human Resource Management, also known as SHRM, to lead a couple of our student activities that we have and student engagement opportunities. So we actually met through SHRM's mentorship program that they offered, and he was our facilitator. He was absolutely amazing. You can literally never forget him, ever. And also through SHRM's Talent Accelerator that they offered to students as well. So he is amazing in so many different ways. And I'm so excited for you all to hear our conversation today, as he is just as engaging probably throughout this episode as he is as a facilitator. And that leads me to also get back to your company. So congratulations on celebrating 10 years. That's amazing.
Thank you so much. It is pretty incredible. It's been the best learning journey for sure.
I'm sure running a company does not seem easy. Nonetheless, having it in business for so long, can you talk a little bit more about where the idea came from for your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. I've always been a creator or a builder. It's something that I noticed early on. When I was 18, I launched a nonprofit organization in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I'm from originally. And that organization was centered around making sure that young people were at tables where decisions were being made that impacted them. And that could take place in a variety of different contexts. So I was helping to launch the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council so that when policies at the city level were being made or funding decisions were impacting nonprofits serving young people or schools, again, young people had a chance to be at those tables to help inform that decision making and the programming. And then also in terms of schools, like I was an active student leader, but was very much an introvert early on. And so kind of found myself through service, through student leadership, and found other people that were sort of similar to me, had similar values. And so I was really passionate about making sure that young people who didn't see themselves as leaders started to realize that through their actions, through their thoughts, that they could step into leadership opportunities and really both discover themselves, but also lead an impact for others. And so, again, it's been sort of an incredible journey because having started a nonprofit, worked in the nonprofit sector for 15 plus years at a national and local level, I started then to shift into corporate. So I worked in Capital One. I managed their community affairs team. And it was really fascinating because I saw that there was this sort of divide between community-based organizations and companies. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you zoom real far out, I think they all wanted the same thing, but maybe we're using different language. They were sort of looking at different ways of prioritizing the work. And so that was really the catalyst for why I stepped out and launched CoLabL, was to be a bridge between the young people that were looking for areas to explore career pathways, to take skills to the next level, build their professional network, and companies who are looking to attract great talent. And so, again, a lot of times, for context, a lot of times companies were hiring straight from schools where a lot of their employees had graduated or their executives had been, alumni of. And I wanted to sort of break that and say, look, there's so much great talent coming out of community-based organizations who actually know their participants way better than a lot of universities know their students. And so if I can help facilitate that relationship building process before the point of application, meaning if I can connect employee volunteers and people managers with young talent through programming before they ever apply for an internship, apprenticeship, or job, then it's really helping them to see their skills in action. And in some ways, expose them to new career pathways that young person maybe never even thought existed before. So that's really been kind of the core to our work. It has certainly evolved and taken different shapes through the years, as you can imagine, with things like COVID and global pandemics. But we have navigated a lot, and I'm proud of the fact that we've continued to grow every year for the last 10 years, which means we're doing something right along the way.
Wow. I mean, I can attest that you guys are definitely doing something right for sure. Being a part of your programming, and it's crazy to think about. I love that you also added the perspective of finding yourself as an introvert throughout
Yep.
basically like servant leadership and student opportunities. I feel like when I was younger, when I was in high school, I also had a similar opportunity where we went through like a peer program where we were helping other peers get through high school and navigate their challenges, whether in the household or whether in academics. So getting to be a part of a program like that really opened up my eyes to I can help people in so many different ways. And I'm not just bound to maybe doing it through science or math like I thought I was.
Yeah.
And so curating that opportunity and that accessibility for me was so important to understand what I wanted to do. And it made me more aware of all of the different ways that not only I could help, but the ways that I could succeed in a different way.
Yeah.
So reframing
Yeah.
it and centering myself versus just giving to others was also something I learned throughout that period. So it's been amazing to see how much that you've been able to accomplish, always celebrating you through LinkedIn and everything that you guys do. And so it's very exciting just to see like you understand even through every phase of your life the importance of really empowering young opportunities and young leadership and the real importance of youth engagement and programming. You have had some of the most engaging, if not the most engaging programming I have ever seen, to where I have had the opportunity to, when I'm thinking about how am I going to be a great facilitator or coach or just genuine supporter, in what ways am I actively engaging people to where it matters? And it feels
Yeah.
like the bottom line is that they feel like they walked away with something that could help them. Was that
Yeah.
something that you've always had within you and just being able to curate engaging programming that way? Or was it something that you've learned over time that's developed into this great thing that it is?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was something, to be honest, that was always in me, but I never had the language to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I'm a huge Maya Angelou fan. One of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou that I say all the time is, people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you made them feel. And I think, sort of an aha moment along my life journey. And I still true back to this today and all the work we do. So I had an opportunity. I'm the youngest of three. I have two older brothers. And when they were, one summer going off to summer camp to be counselors at a YMCA, I was left home for the first summer by myself. And that wasn't fun. So like the first day I was like, okay, this really sucks. Like I want to do something. And so I convinced my older brother to let me come to the YMCA camp. And instead of actually be a camper, because I was only 11 at the time, I was like, I don't want to be a camper. Like, can I like volunteer? And so they let me volunteer with the 6-year-olds. And a really long story short would be one of the 6-year-olds that I had the opportunity to work with that summer. His name was Patrick. And he was a little boy with Down syndrome. And there were a lot of people around Patrick that basically said all the things that Patrick could not do. Like he couldn't play the sports games, he couldn't engage in certain activities or go on certain field trips. But here's the thing. I met Patrick every morning at like 7:30 in the morning when we got to the pool with like a huge hug as he ran out of his car. His mom dropped him off. He would give me a big hug. He'd be so excited for summer camp for the day. And I learned that summer in working with him that like there were all these limitations that were put on him. So when he saw the other kids playing or doing something that maybe he might wanted to do, he like held himself back. He believed in that limiting belief, right? That others were sort of projecting. And so I started to notice that. And I'd be like, hey, do you want to play kickball? Because if you want to play kickball, like I'll do it with you and like we'll figure it out together. And so we did that. And little by little, people started to realize what he was capable of, and he started to believe it. And I think for me, like that was such a transformative relationship and lesson that I've carried with me. We're going to navigate this world where all these people around us in different ways are going to put on these limiting beliefs, and they're going to hold us back from achieving our full potential. And you said something that was really powerful. You said, look, I realized I didn't just need to go into like science or math because I was good at them or I was interested in them, but I also wanted to help people. I wanted to increase accessibility. And to me, that's like balancing what you do with how you do it, right? I can do a certain career path, but how I do it is going to be unique to my values, unique to the character that I bring to the work, unique to like the way I make people feel when I'm engaging in those activities. And I think for me, that's like all of my work, whether it's mentorship or skill building or speaking, like I want people to see what they're truly capable of, believe it, and then do it.
And it seems like such a simple formula, right? Of like, I want
Yeah.
you to. Exactly. Like it sounds so straight to the point. Exactly. And then it's like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Like that is something I'm learning right now as someone who's early career of like, okay, so if I just do this and then I do this, then I got this. And it's like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Like, it's not exactly the full steps of just, oh, it just leads into itself. It doesn't work that way. And something that you said that really resonated with me was about the limiting beliefs, right? That is something that you will consistently go through within your lifetime. It doesn't just stop at like grade school. It doesn't stop at high school. It does not stop at college. But even when you're out of grad, and with me being in graduate school, but still removed from like undergrad and having peers around me that are like trying to find their first job or working through the job market that we have right now, it's been, for a lack of better words, tough. I would definitely say it like that, where in terms of the community is feeling like it is limited, in terms of early career feeling like they're limited in what they can do, and figuring out how do I figure out how to stretch my wings? What are some things that I'm not looking at, to where it's reflecting inwards. It's more so of them taking their outer environment and it's being placed on, there's something wrong with me. There's something that I'm not doing. And I feel like that is something when it comes to recognizing your potential and building up that resilience, it can constantly kind of knock some blocks down. Like if you were a kid and you were just playing with blocks and then they fell and you started crying. Simpler version, but definitely more complex in terms of understanding how to pick yourself back up through things. And so I want to know from your perspective, how were you able to build resilience to get where you are now?
Yeah. I'll say a couple things. First is it never goes away. You're 100% right. Like there isn't a day that goes by that I don't doubt myself several times during the day, right? In terms of like what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, what I'm achieving or what I'm not achieving. And so I think like this pressure to get on the other side of doubt is an unrealistic pressure that we put on ourselves or we let other people, put us in. And so I think it's important just to acknowledge that you are okay where you are, with whom you are with, right? Doing the things you're doing. I think the second is that to understand the difference between motivation and discipline. Like I've learned this on my journey, like motivation will come and go. There are going to be days where you're just like tired and overwhelmed and stressed out, but the discipline is what carries you through. Angela Duckworth in the book Grit, she has one of the most watched TED Talks as well on it, which is a great one to watch. But she talks about intensity will steal the limelight. Consistency is what carries you through. So it's the intensity of like, sometimes we work really, really, really hard to get to the top, to achieve something that someone else has achieved that we admire or respect, to realize that we don't even want that in the first place. We were just doing it because we saw it on LinkedIn and somebody was posting what they achieved. And we're like, well, I could do that too. Let me prove it. And then we do it and we're like, why did I do that? Because I fell into this pressure trap. Versus like the consistency of your practice and how you show up. And at the end of the day, are you happy with the person that you've evolved into in that day? Are you happy with the things you've achieved in that day? So I think that like that's an important part, is that the motivation doesn't always show up when we want it to, right? And so like when you really want to deliver for a partner, when you want to deliver for a friend or a colleague at work, it's pushing through and with that discipline. I think the third thing I would just acknowledge, which is super important, is that when you push through with discipline, part of your discipline practice should be taking care of yourself and acknowledging like when you need to recharge your energy. So Amaya, you and I have talked about this. Like I'm still an introvert. I haven't changed from when I was in high school, right? So like there's moments where it's like I'm on all day, like going into sessions and meetings and trying to create. And there's moments where I'm like, just need a break to like recharge my batteries. And then I'll be able to dive back in and give all of myself in whatever I'm doing next. And for me to be able to find the confidence to speak that out loud has been a journey. But like once you find it and once you start to do it, what I found is it gives other people around you permission to do the same. And it's almost like leading by example. They start to say what they need, and together we start supporting each other. So I think that's like the bottom line of like what I would suggest is like the resilience comes from acknowledging that number one, we're not on this journey alone. And if we leaned on each other a little bit more, we would actually get farther together.
That is so true. And as soon as you said the first thing of that pressure to perform and where that takes us off of our path, I remember I was talking to a group of students and they were asking about how do you just beat the pressure, basically? How do you create, your own space without feeling like you are running this race? And I told them, I was like, to be honest, you go through it. Like that's how you figure out that's your path. I remember telling them, like, you ever have that feeling when you see people accomplish things on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube and you just feel sad? And it's like, these people are like bungee jumping off of cliffs or something, things I would never want to do. So why do you feel upset about it? And then recognizing where is that feeling and that emotion coming from? What is it actually tied back to? And then how are we creating a space for ourselves first before we think about how we're pleasing others, to really define what success looks like for us and what that journey will look like, and being realistic with that journey. There are a couple times within my journey where I was like, you know what? I am going to have this degree by this age because I need to look the smartest. And that's what I was used to, always being the youngest to do something and blah, 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 blah. And then life got in the way. And it was like, you know what? I can't keep going. Actually, you know what? I need to sit down. I've burned myself out. We need to think of a new way forward. Why do I feel like it's so important for me to have this right now when eventually I will accomplish it in a meaningful amount of time, but also where it will have so much more impact, knowing one, what it took to get to this degree, but also two, how much more I will feel like it's better to get it then because it was on my own time. And it means a lot more that way versus what it means to others and what it truly means to me.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'm a huge believer that the universe guides us where we need to be with whom we need to be with. And I truly hear like what you're saying is sometimes when we really want something and it doesn't play out the way we thought it would, if we reframe it as the universe is redirecting me, and my job now in this moment is to figure out what is the lesson that it's trying to teach me, and we put all of our energy there, we gain so much that actually helps us to accelerate towards whatever goals we want to achieve, right? And so a good friend of mine always says this line too. He says, if you want something bad enough, you're going to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'll find an excuse. So I think sometimes when we keep pushing things down the to-do list, when we keep feeling overwhelmed, it's important to sort of call time out and zoom out and say, like, why do I feel so overwhelmed? Why do I feel so stressed? Why do I feel like I could just like never get done what I need to get done? Well, it may just be when you reflect on it that you're not doing the things that truly light you up. And if you redirected your energy, you redirected who you're spending your time with to people that are actually pouring into you and challenging you in meaningful and respectful ways, you will find that you're going to have a different energy. And that energy is going to be what carries you forward versus the energy suck, the energy drain, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. I also feel like it goes back to this form of survival. I feel like everybody has their own form of this, but I've noticed for myself personally that that energy suck comes from things where I feel like, no, I need to do this in order to survive and get to this next step of where I want to go, or XYZ, whatever that looks like. And once you stop operating in your form of like survival, things get a lot easier to do when you realize, like, oh, I didn't complete something by that time. Well, it's still there tomorrow. Like it's still going to get done. I'm still alive. My mom's favorite thing that she used to say is, "You're not dead, are you? You're not going to die if it sits there." Like, and that used to be the scariest thing. And sometimes it also stopped me from moving forward in the things that I wanted to do, not only because I didn't have the energy, but because I was having so much fear around not completing these things. How was I going to get to the next thing that I wanted to do? It was literally like I was in my own way, and it really scared me from doing other things that even had like one commonality towards it. Whether it was, oh, I need to have confidence to do this and to do that. I don't have the confidence to do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to be confident enough to go on a stage and talk to people. And it just became this whole just jumble of things that were unrealistic fears, like the things that were just not real. But hearing you talk about just one, you have to level set yourself. You have to be realistic with yourself. You have to be real with yourself in terms of motivation will not carry you all the way, all the time. You have to have your own discipline and your own energy to get through it, while also having those boundaries for yourself. Like if it is draining, if it is sucking the life out of you, take a step back. See what you can get rid of. There's always something that you can get rid of. And there's always a way that you can take care of yourself. And we so often push that to the forefront of everything we got to do behind here. It's like, you know what? We're just going to throw our self-care behind us. And that's often where we mess up and where we catch ourselves.
Absolutely. I think it's grounding yourself too in like the why behind the tasks that you're doing. So if you do reach that point where you're sort of overwhelmed or feeling burnt out or even stuck, if you're just like, I'm working really, really hard, but I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere different. I keep achieving the sort of same thing and people keep passing me over for opportunities for growth. I think in that case, it's like important to, again, I always say zoom in and zoom out and say like, what is the why behind this work? Like the set of decisions that I'm making today. I could do anything with my 24 hours, but I'm choosing to spend it in the following ways. Are the ways that I'm spending it aligned to my why? And are they the only way to get to my why? And I think that second question is something I always challenge people to think more about, is like, maybe the way that you're going at it is not necessarily the most efficient or effective or aligned to your core values. And that's the issue. So if you begin to explore your options, as you mentioned, Amaya, I'm like very focused on mentorship. And one of the things I always say in mentorship is you got to balance teaching and learning together. It's not this power dynamic where the mentor knows all and the mentee is just like soaking in all of this new knowledge. But it's like, how do we learn from each other's lived experiences? And as a big part of that, it's being open to exploring options. A great mentor is not someone who tells you what to do. A great mentor who is somebody who coaches you with great questions to discover the answer from within, because then it's aligned to your why, it's aligned to your values, and aligned to the experiences that bring you joy and that energize you in different ways. As a mentor, I don't know what that is for you, right? So My job is to help you discover it and then support you as we move forward together. Just like the example with Patrick. Like, I can't tell Patrick what to do, but I can observe. Like, when Patrick was like leaning in and like I could see he was itching to get off the bench and like get in the game, be like, do you want to play? If we notice that about each other, that's how we build stronger support systems, right? If you notice something in me that's like, Dan, do you want to do this? Like, I feel like you're getting energy when we're talking about it. I feel like, you always default to this in the conversation. When you start to sort of call out that you're noticing me, it gives me then permission to be like, you know what? Yes, I'm going to give breath to that goal. It's not crazy, right? I'm going to take it out of my head and give it to the universe and see where the universe is going to take it.
Yeah, exactly. And you called me out like earlier when you said between your two questions at the beginning, and the second one being the only way that you're thinking about this. Are you sure there's no other way you can accomplish this goal? And
Yeah.
sometimes I'm like, no, this is the only way. This is the
Right.
only way I want to do it. The only way that I feel like it's going to be worth it. But it's not me feeling like that's the only way it's going to be worth it. It's just how we've traditionally done it in society. And that's what deems it worth it. And then I
Yeah.
step back and I do it another way. And then my mom just looks at me and she's like, did that kill you? And I'm like, no, it didn't.
Right, exactly.
Exactly.
Amaya, I'm going to tell you something really funny. So, when I joined Capital One, I started to build my team across the country in different regions, and I brought them all together for a retreat. And one of the things I did as an icebreaker is I had everybody send me in advance a childhood photo that best represented their personality. And it was just like, I'm sure people listening are familiar with things like Myers-Briggs and personality and leadership assessments and all that stuff. This is like my simplest version of a leadership assessment. So everybody shared their photo and explained like their personalities. And mine was, as a little kid, I had this picture where I was standing on a big tree trunk because my dad would take us on these little hikes. And I had my arms like on my hips, and I was just like, I looked like the leader, like the little like kid that was trying to like take charge. And it was just like, it reminded me of like the debater versus the dialoguer, right? Like the debater is somebody who's like, it's my way or no way, it's going to work. I promise you, like, just follow this. And, if anybody questions it, obviously they're wrong and I'm right? Versus the dialoguer, which is like, we're going to talk about it and we're going to broaden our perspective and we're going to look at it from all sorts of different angles. And we're going to see what we're missing in the equation versus just assuming something at surface value. It is what it is, right? And so I've learned in my own leadership journey to really approach more relationships, more opportunities from a perspective of dialogue. Like, let me amp up my curiosity and explore this from all its different angles versus believing that my game plan from how I'm going to get to, from point A to point B is the only way to do that. So it's a practice that I think could serve all of us better.
Exactly. And you bring up a great point. I often think for myself as I am the debater, like in my own life where I'm like, I have to get it done this way versus when I'm working in a collective, my goals shift to how can I make sure every single person is talking, every single person gets their point across of what they want to say? How can I figure out how we work the best as a group versus like, take everyone else out of it and it's just me involved. We're gonna do it this way. This is how I want to do it, but it's only affecting myself. And so I've been realizing also of how those two don't align and that there's also the beauty in both. So being gentler with myself and thinking about, okay, self, how can we collaborate to get this done versus just saying my way or the highway when this only terribly affects me. And then also, where does it come into play where sometimes within the dialogue, I'm making sure everyone's heard, but making sure we're also finding like what's our common ground and what's our through line at the end of the day, how we all are agreeing to move forward. And so the beauty of moderation is something that I'm constantly learning every single day, but you bring up such a good point with that.
Yeah. And you also, it's so interesting because I'm very similar. And one thing I've learned is you can collaborate with yourself if you look at how multidimensional we all are, right? So if you think about it, it's like when you're really, really in debate mode on some sort of leadership project and you challenge yourself to say, like, is the choice that I'm making, is the approach that I'm taking serving the relational side of me? And if you sort of come out of your body and be like, okay, so yes, leader Dan is going hard pressed against this particular path, but like, is that going to impact Dan's ability to have great relationships with other people? Is it going to impact his mental health and wellness? Like all the different elements that make us who we are, like our holistic care is so important. And so I think sometimes like we can collaborate more effectively with ourselves if we think about how do our decisions impact the various dimensions of who we are.
Exactly. We have to treat ourselves as collaborators versus just viewing it as, again, only for the outside. There's so many ways that you are serving
Yep.
others in ways that you should be serving yourself as well. And that
Yep.
brings me to a really great point of we've been saying we this whole time, rarely any
Yep.
eyes, which just kind of showcases our perspectives and also our leadership in that way. But it also
Yep.
makes me think about your book that is out titled
Yeah.
We Got This.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You guys, look, I just have to show the cover. I have to, so you guys know exactly what to buy when you finish this episode. Your book, I would love if you can talk a little bit more about what your book is, and then we can dive into some of the think pieces there.
Yeah, honestly, this book is the culmination of so many different like career mentoring conversations and coaching discussions that I've had with early career talent through the past 10 years. And it was a way for me to say like, look, I'm a giver. So if anyone here is like a big Adam Grant fan, Adam Grant wrote the book Give and Take. And one of the things he looks at is the difference between givers, takers, and matchers. Givers are the people that are always looking, how can I add value? And that's sort of like my natural sort of value system and how I operate in the world. Like if I learn something, I want to give it to somebody else. I'm like, somebody else needs this. And so in the book, like that's really my goal, is to make it not necessarily a book that you read from like cover to cover, but it's a book that you can go to any one of its chapters that's focused on all the different challenges as well as opportunities that you face in the early stage of your career. And to be honest with you, like I've heard from other people who are much later in their career, they're like, this book is just as valuable for them. And so sometimes we're missing the tactics, we're missing the tools, we're missing the way to sort of work through the sort of nuances we navigate in the workplace. So that was the goal, is to give people an opportunity to have some of those tools in their toolbox and create some dialogue where we can be balancing, again, teaching and learning together.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that you said it's not something that you have to read cover to cover, because I've been doing literally exactly that, where I've been going in between chapters where I'm like, you know what? I think I need this message today. So hopefully this doesn't apply to like the chapter that was before and I'm missing like, how it's supposed to be cumulative, but I'm very glad to hear that. And one thing I want to reference before I'm looking at the book, because I was like, I need to talk about this. I love how you have the chapters divided with a focus. I've never seen that before. You have your catchy titles for your chapters, but really the focus of each book, I love the statements within them. I immediately was drawn in because they make the statement, network with a purpose. Okay, now you're giving me the tools to be able to do that. And one common thing that I hear from early career all the time is that people will just give that statement, but no action behind it. And it's almost like a rite of passage almost. Hey, I had to figure it out. So do you. I'll give you the bare minimum. I have a teacher who will, back in grad school or back in like last semester, where he would say, I am like Liberty Mutual. I give you the bare minimum that you need. That was his bottom line of the class. And I cannot tell you how much I struggled in that class because you were giving me the bare minimum with no actions behind it. And I also thought about in that moment of how I learn and how I lead. And how I learn and how I lead are direct reflections of one another, where I want to be able to have all the tools. So the way that I lead is I want to give people all the tools to be able to do that too, because I know what it's like to just say, figure it out. And then you're figuring it out for like the next 3 years and it still doesn't feel like you've moved anywhere. So for you to have it listed like this and then, your guide at the top, I love that. When you came to really figuring out how to structure or format this book, what was that process like for you?
It was so easy, to be honest with you. So I travel a lot for work. And so like when I'm on a plane, I literally like mapped the outline because I was like, okay, what are all the topics that like I talk to people about? And so that was like super easy for me to just like brainstorm and write them all down. And then this is an honest story. So I had the writing of this book on my vision board 2 years ago, and I just kept delaying it. And I think part of that was I was like spending my energy doing other things. So I was claiming that I was too busy to make that goal happen. And I also think it was a moment of self-doubt where I kept doubting myself, like, why would anybody buy my book? Like, what do I have to offer versus the hundreds and thousands of other books that are out there? And so last year I made it an effort and I said, you know what? I'm writing this book. It's in my head. I have the outline. Like, I know the content because I incorporate it into everything that I do. And so what I did is I literally booked a 1-week book writing retreat in Halifax in Canada. I had gone there for work and I just like fell in love with Halifax. It was such like a peaceful, waterside community. I found my coffee shop and I was like, all right, this is the place. I'm like, I have the perfect scenery, the perfect coffee shop. People are super friendly. And so I went there and I cranked out the book in 1 week. And this is an important tactic I also use. I really created accountability because, my partner and others in my life knew that I was going on this book writing retreat. So they were checking in with me and they're like, all right, what's the progress that you're making each day? And then also like I chatted with the hotel team and then the coffee shop I connected with every day. And like they were cheering me on and they were checking in to see like what progress I was making. And so to me, that's like the value of the title, We Got This. It's not I got this, right? It's not that I can do whatever I put my mind to on my own, but there's things that I've learned through the lessons others have shared with me or the stories that they've provided to me. There's people in my life that are either showing me what to do or what not to do. There's all sorts of ways in which we're influencing each other. And so when we say we got this, it's like, let's stop pretending like we can do everything ourselves and start leaning more into the relationships of other people, especially other people that are part of like our web of support. Like not the people that are fueling the doubts, but the people that are boosting the confidence, right? The people that are challenging us to look at things in different angles or to step into discomfort and try new things on, even when it doesn't work out the first time. Those are your people. And when you find them, hold on to them and embrace them and really be mindful of how you manage the energy flow between you, because that's what will get you to always be evolving, always be growing in your lifetime. And it's not just your job. And that's why even the title, it's like how to thrive in your career and in life. Like we're way more than our jobs. We're way more than the titles that we have. And when you're in the job search process and you're feeling like, again, overwhelmed because things aren't going the way that you want, it's in many ways, like it's, again, the universe trying to guide you where you need to be. And maybe it's, again, zooming out and really reflecting on my like application process is maybe not working the way that I want it to. How do I change it? My network is not unlocking opportunities. How do I change it? Right? What I'm saying is not resonating. It's not communicating the full value I can bring a team. How do I change it? Right? So it's not us, but maybe it's the practice that we're putting into play every day. And if we tweak things, just like if you were an athlete or if you're in theater or any other hobby, like you're always evolving and adjusting things to be able to achieve the sort of, the pinnacle performance, if you will, each day.
Yeah. I'm writing down Halifax is where I need to go. It sounds like the peaceful place to be. So
it's amazing.
I have been to Canada one time and I fell in love. I went to Vancouver. It was absolutely phenomenal. That was some of the best food I've ever had. They have the best Japanese cheesecake ever over there. And I think about it at least once a month. So I need to go get some more.
Nice.
To your point of the title of the book of We Got This, but also making sure to stress the importance of you are not just your career, when that is something that I have been pulling away from like the past 2 years, where success-oriented mindsets typically run through the career track first. And, what am I doing? How are other people seeing what I'm doing? And it felt very like it wasn't, ironically, it was not self-serving to me, as much as we are always doing this to, better ourselves and put ourselves here. But put ourselves there, why? Of course, those questions not being asked. And for you, even talking about like the discipline that you put in, not only to write the book, but also stressing the importance of, discipline is not also just something that you do on your own. it's also something that within your support system, they also do with you. And that is being disciplined and being mindful about your relationships, how you're curating those, but also how you're nurturing those as well. And so with
Yep.
them also holding themselves accountable and checking in with you and making a
Yep.
point for you also checking in with the people that you worked with around you in terms of the coffee shop and the hotel staff and being just the natural networker essentially throughout this process is super interesting. And you brought up another great point of, when you're an athlete or let's say like you're in some type of activity like that, you're always looking for easily, naturally, how to perform, how to be better, how to be great, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't really until I caught myself probably last year where I was thinking about like, how am I disciplining myself? And I actually realized the way that I was doing it was not working. In fact, I was punishing myself. I literally was like, if I don't get something done, do we really deserve ice cream? Girl, yes. You literally worked a whole like 12-hour day on top of doing all this other stuff. Yes, you do. And then I realized that like my version of winning was way too high. Like it was something that was not optimal for me to achieve every day. And I had to be realistic with myself of like, what is my fundamental unit of a win? That's something that I actually learned at a conference that was on organizational development. And they were talking about within organizations, understanding the key part of what is a fundamental unit of a win. Where do you guys feel like as long as I did this, I succeeded? So I started
Yep.
practicing that internally with myself. And now my wins are so achievable, but they're also way more meaningful. Whether they're small, they're big, it doesn't matter. They were impactful and helped me move forward. And so
Yep.
intentionally also tuning into shifting your learning when you need to, and the way you've learned probably your entire life, it may not be how you learn for the rest of your life, is
Yep.
so important, and how you're actively thinking about that versus like, just in those activities where it feels natural to respond. How are you doing that within the rest of your life and showing up intentionally that way as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That reminds me of, I'm a huge fan of James Clear, James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about the importance of mins and max. So when you're setting your goals, and I love what you just shared too, because it's like, okay, your definition of success needed to be reworked, right? Because if you don't set a max and you just keep pushing yourself to like max out your performance beyond what is like humanly possible day in and day out, it's just not sustainable. But if you create a min and a max, right, and you say like, okay, minimum time and effort that I'm going to put into this project is X, the maximum is Y, I'm going to fall between those two. Now you've got some guardrails. Those are your boundaries in which you can operate in. And that's what's going to allow you to carry through the long-term game versus the cranking through. I mean, I got burnt out really fast early in my career, right? Like I was running a nonprofit, working around the clock. I was going to school at night. That's how I went through undergrad. I was working 3 jobs. It was like this insane time. And I burnt out by the time I was like mid 20s and frustrated because I was like, I'm working so hard and I'm like trying to make a big difference. I just feel like everybody's telling me no, or like I'm too young, or I can't do that. And I realized it's like, okay, hold up, right? Like time out. Like this is not going to work. And I remember very vividly that this goes to our point earlier about the power of storytelling. There was a executive who was a woman at Capital One who shared her own life story as a mom, as an executive leader within the organization, to a group of emerging leaders. And she said, I was at a Charlotte airport at the middle of the night. I was able to get on the last flight home to see my kid in a softball tournament the next day, and the flight got canceled. And she told this incredibly powerful story where she literally like sank to the floor. It was like midnight in an empty Charlotte airport. And she's like, I was literally pulling my hair out because I was so sad that like I couldn't achieve what I wanted to at work. I wasn't going to be there for my daughter. I wasn't going to be like the mom that I wanted to be. And like, again, it goes back to like all this pressure that we keep putting on ourselves until we acknowledge that we're human. And we have, again, choices that we make. And every choice that we make has a consequence, right? And so if we make different choices, do we find different energy? And can we apply it in different contexts in different ways? Because that worker bee in us is not serving the other dimension of who we want to be in our lives. And so again, that kind of goes back to what we're talking about is like, you're not just one thing, you're lots of things. And if you look at sort of taking time to self-reflect, to meditate, to really think about, am I happy with all the different dimensions of who I am and how I'm showing up in the world, and where I'm falling short, spend a little extra time and energy, reallocate your energy to those spaces so you feel more complete. And I've learned to do that, and I feel like it's made a huge difference.
I'm learning to do that. It's making a big difference, like you said. Exactly. Have to give both sides of the coin for my audience. I know most of you might be me. And that also brings me to the first chapter of your book, actually, thinking about really figuring out who you are and your identity and what you value, and even down to like the feedback file, which I thought was genius. It's one of the exercises in his book where you are keeping all of the feedback that people are telling you, and then you reassess that feedback to see the trends and the patterns, also to identify your core strengths and things like that. So helping you also figure that out as well. That has been, ironically, like one of the hardest chapters for me, because I'm going through it and I'm like, oh my gosh, do I not know myself? Which is not the case, like fully all the time. But when you're really sitting down, and I know you have another chapter in your book about auditing yourself, which is something that I'm used to doing. I didn't realize how connected, almost like auditing yourself and then your identity and what you value they're so strong. Like they're literally so melded together. And that's been something for me of like, wow, that has been something that is making me think in different ways. I've currently been thinking about ways to increase, or more so make myself more efficient in terms of like my productivity, where like when you were talking about you going through undergrad, having 3 jobs, I was you. Like we were there where I was like, I don't want my parents to pay for college. I want to do it. So I'm going to do all these things. I was an RA. I was doing all this stuff. And I was thinking back to those moments when I was thinking about like my identity, and I was thinking about my values and how I describe myself. And so I was like, okay, if I remove all of these labels from me, which I always do, what is something that I am without any of those things, without a student, without being, in career, none of that. And usually I have the same ones that come up, but one that came up for me that has never come up before was connective. And I was like, okay, what does that mean for me? But it made me think about all of the ways where like things that I thought were impossible, or things that I thought didn't fit or didn't align with me, always found their way to connect. And that is what has made me different in terms of how I look at things, how I look at obstacles. That's like when people say, a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet. And sometimes some people will turn to those people and are like, oh my gosh, you're insane. But also then you have those people that are like, actually, wait, hold on a second. And I am someone who looks at things where it causes me to think different, and it causes other people to think different. And I was like, I would have never recognized that without the exercises within this book, because beforehand it felt like I was stuck and it felt like everything was so hard. And when you were talking about, your challenges, and also within you going through the book, that also made me wonder, did you have a hard time with any of these chapters in this book? Did you have a hard time writing any of them, or were they as easy as the outline?
I mean, I think it was easy because I've a lot of what is in this book are things that I've specifically been working really hard at. So it hasn't come easy to me at the point of doing it, right? But being able to then find progress in it has enabled me to sort of turn around and share it with other people. And again, I have in my head, my next book. And so it's like, I'm already thinking about okay, what are the things that I didn't cover in this book that I either should have or didn't necessarily fit. And so it deserves its own space. But I think a couple of things that I've learned along the way is that when you talk about identity, is sometimes part of your identity is unlearning the things that aren't serving you well. And, it's a part of who you are, right? And there's it's a simple example. I grew up in a household where it's straight A's were an expectation. And so my mom, if I got a 99 out of 100, my mom's first question would have been, well, what did you miss? Right? Versus awesome job, right? But then it's that served me well because it pushed me to give the best of myself. it also had moments where it didn't serve me well, because then I put this unnecessary pressure. I remember taking tests in college where, like, I'm a terrible test taker, but like I would be so stressed out, like I would lose feeling in my hand because I was so stressed about just getting the perfect score. And it's why today, when you train yourself and your mind to unlearn things that aren't healthy, I have on my vision board, progress over perfection. I have to remind myself of that every single day. And so, again, to anyone who's listening, it's like your identity is so important to explore and to realize what it is you need to lean into and what it is that you maybe need to unlearn that's not serving you in the best way possible. And that's hard to do. And again, that's where accountability partners come in. It's where, when you feel safe to have relationships with people that you trust, to open up about those things and to share, like, this is what I'm processing right now. Like, I'm not crazy, but like, I need to figure out how to work through that. I need to figure out how to get out of my own way in some cases. So it's a constant journey. I'll tell you a really quick story of that. Like, years and years ago, I've been doing all this leadership development work, and I was running all these workshops all across, the country. And I wanted to be a keynote speaker. I was like, okay, I feel like I need to get onto like a bigger stage. I can reach more people. That was like my why. Like, how do I get to more and more and more? And then I did a keynote, and I was terrible. It was awful. Like, it was a terrible experience for so many things, for so many reasons. And I like remember getting into the car and driving back to my hotel and like just like crying and like saying all the like negative stuff to myself, that like, why did I try to do that? You're terrible. Like, I literally didn't do a keynote after that for years, like years and years. And like 2 years ago, I had an opportunity through an organization I work with. They wanted me to be their keynote for a conference, and it was 10,000 people in Vegas and at the convention center. And so I was like, no, like, that's not going to work. Like, I had like immediately the flashbacks of that terrible experience and everything. And so, people around me pushed me to do it, and I was terrified. And this is just a very quick point to the story. I remember being behind the stage, and as I was about to be introduced, I was like heart racing, hands sweaty, like questioning every moment of it. And this woman came over to me, who I didn't really know that well, and gave me like a big high five. And she's like, you could do this. And it just gave me that little jolt, right, that I needed to like walk up those stairs and get on that stage and do what I needed to do. And everything turned out so different. And so I think it's like, reflect instead of what happened yesterday. Take a step back and reflect on what happened a few years ago in your life journey and how much you've grown, how much you've evolved, and let that be the jolt of confidence that you need to tackle the next thing that's uncomfortable right now for you. And I think the more we do that, again, the more we'll unlock all sorts of experiences and opportunities that we don't even know exist right now too.
Unlearn and unlock.
Yep, absolutely.
New phrase. Okay, thank you. See, look, even just talking. This is your next keynote right here. Everyone,
Right.
This is it. Not only that, but this is a book in itself. This is an audiobook, guys. Like, and you're getting this completely free. Like, and it's so interesting that you say that, of you saying how nervous you were for like your first keynote and all of those things, even the second one afterwards, and the first effect of that one. When for me, I look at you and I'm like, oh my gosh, what can't Dan do? Like, literally, it's
things.
It's amazing. Also, that touch point, and with that woman who's like, you can do this, of just how much you get a boost when other people see those invisible strengths almost, or just those, they see those moments in you. And I've had those where I've questioned people and I'm like, okay, you say I can do this. Why? Not
Right.
because when it's like, sometimes I don't believe in myself and I'm asking, but also I want to see what you see in me, so I know how to also coach and nurture it within myself. Because I tell people all the time, you may not know parts of you ever until you meet certain people that unlock those things. And if we, just put ourselves out there, that's the first step. And that sometimes can be the hardest. So even you just high-fiving that lady, you took the first step and look where it got you.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to also understand, like, full circle in our conversation, every one of us can be that woman. right? Like every single person who's listening to this has the power. Nobody has to give it to you. You already have it, right? To be that influence in someone else's life. And that really goes back to like the way you make people feel when they're in your presence. None of us have all the answers. None of us have it all figured out. And so if we just acknowledge that human experience that we're all in together, again, it unlocks a different type of connection than what many of us are used to.
Mm-hmm. And I want to end with something that you actually said in your intro that I have literally been looking at. And I say this actually in the outro of the podcast, but I thought this was just so fun that it aligned. I don't want you to just survive and go through the motions of daily routines. I want you to embrace who you are, show up authentically and confidently, unlearn the things that are not serving you, and thrive each day by putting the best of you forward at work and beyond. The world needs your light, so let's make sure you are shining brightly.
Love it. Yeah.
And that's literally everything we talked about within this episode today. Literally.
Exactly.
Just encompassed in a paragraph, in a simple sentence.
Yeah.
And to me, that highlights how much love you put into this book, how much care, but also how much intention and impact in really being able to sit and analyze not only just the early career experience, but your early career experience and beyond, and how you've made that into a persevering practice daily of how you treat yourself and how you treat your career and your life, but also how you also take that same care with others as well and guiding them through their journeys. And I just think you are one of the most inspirational people that I know, really.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an important reminder for all of us that, especially when living in moments personally or in the world that we're in, there's a lot of darkness. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, like if you can shine your light, it not only makes things a little bit brighter, but it often encourages other people to do the same thing. And, you know, a lot of times when I'm talking to groups, there's this line that's love is the life of humanity. Mm-hmm. And love is equal to your light. Every one of us has a light. The choice is ours to shine it or not. And so if we choose to shine it, we tend to invite other people to do the same and things get a lot brighter. But when we hold our light inside and don't give it, you know, let the world see it, and we dim it by those limiting beliefs, or we allow our doubt to overwhelm us, then the world remains a dark place. Mm-hmm. And I just think that we have the power to change it. And I truly, truly believe that. And so I'm going to keep writing, keep speaking, keep doing all these things to try to remind people of that every day.
Literally, you have really impacted me. And I've said it 1,000 times over, but like your light has definitely helped me shine mine a lot brighter. You've also helped me throughout your programming that you've done with students, put other people in my life that shine my light and make it even brighter, down to my mentor that I still talk to this day, and Absolutely. All of the other opportunities that I'm able to look back on my experience and say, hey, I have someone that makes me want to do XYZ, or I see someone that I want to help them get to XYZ. In both ways, I'm still guiding my light to be able to showcase impact somewhere. And that's super important. It's like the lights at the concert when they're like, turn your lights on.
Exactly.
It's like literally just that, but within your life. And I appreciate you bringing so much light to the podcast today. I am so eternally grateful, seriously, that you are continuing to do work that not only empowers you, but empowers others. And I'm grateful to be one of those.
Aw, thanks so much for having me.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Intentional Intern Podcast. We hope you're leaving with fresh insights and a boost of motivation to take on your career journey. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, and share it with your network. Connect with us on LinkedIn and Instagram and let us know your thoughts. Your feedback fuels our next great episode. Until next time, stay intentional, keep growing, and keep shining bright. See you in the next episode.